Well, for a little bit more on this, we're now joined via Zoom by political analyst, Professor Dirk Kotze. Professor, thanks very much indeed for joining us. I suppose once we saw what happened in Johannesburg, there was this expectation that Tshwane would follow quite soon.
Yes, I think that is fair to say that. But at the same time, there's quite serious or significant differences between the two, especially Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni on the one hand and Tshwane on the other hand. And the first big difference between the two is that in the case of the first two, Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, the ANC has a majority of 20 and 21 seats more than that of the DA. While in Tshwane, the ANC's majority is only 6. It has 6 seats more than that of the DA in Tshwane. Now, in Tshwane, the coalition is built firstly around the DA, secondly, Action SA, and thirdly, then the Freedom Front Plus, and then the other smaller parties, in total 6. These 6 parties have a majority on their own. So they don't need the Patriotic Alliance, they don't need the EFF or any of the other parties that are on the side of the ANC at the moment. So the really critically important party in this coalition at the moment is Action SA with their 19 seats. So if Action SA moves over to the ANC's grouping, then the DA won't be able to survive. If Action SA continues to support the DA's coalition, then the ANC won't be able to succeed in a motion of no confidence. So that is, I think, behind what we have experienced today. And that is why there's so much said about that resignation was in order to save the coalition, because it became a standoff between especially the mayor and the Action SA over the last number of months. And that is why if he didn't resign, then it would have been very uncertain whether the DA's coalition would be able to continue at all.
I suppose this then would explain why the resignation has been pushed out to the end of February, supposing that this will give them time to work with Action SA to come up with a plan for a new mayor. Could this mean that Action SA may be able to push for a significant position?
I'm not sure whether Action SA would like to change the composition, for example, of the members of the mayoral committee, because they do have representation there. At the same time, Cope fills the position of the speaker at the moment, and then the position of mayor and the chief whip is that of the DA. Then other important positions are those of the portfolio committees, the Section 79 committees. And I think there might be some changes if the Action SA wants to have more representation at the sort of the management level of the legislature, the local or the council. But I don't think this is in essence the main objective of Action SA. They had their differences of opinion with the mayor, and I think that is one of the key issues. Is very much about him. So in a sense, it was actually a motion of no confidence coming from within the coalition and not so much from the opposition, and that is why this reaction from the mayor happened today.
There are accusations of failure of leadership by Randall Williams. We heard from Msimanga saying that actually, a lot of what the audit outcomes were related to legacy projects and that it really wasn't about this current administration. So is this dissatisfaction within the coalition about Randall Williams more a personality issue, or is it that for sure there were shortcomings in his ability to run the city?
I think it's a little bit of all of them. There is certainly an issue about him as the leading figure in the coalition and the priorities that he identified. For example, he did identify the finances as one of what I would call his signature project in order to rectify and to change this the financial situation, especially after the months of administration, which was absolutely devastating for Tshwane. At the same time, he's a former chief director in the Department of Trade and Industry, so he has very specific background and experiences. And he focused, for example, very much on the automotive industry in the area of the Metropolitan Council. It is was a very important interest for him in order to promote that. But then in the other hand, some issues that affects the residents and all over the Metro Council were not necessarily always addressed as they wish to see. So there is certainly a mixed record for the mayor. But then at the same time, I think we are moving towards an election next year. Political parties, those in the council, in the coalition, as well as those in opposition, are obviously positioning themselves already for that election. And so a party like Action SA, which we know is actually a product from the DA, it's a split and breakaway group from the DA to a large extent, because they are one of the, I would call it, junior partners in the coalition, have to do more in order to present themselves to the public and to start with a campaign of presenting their own identity to the public and not merely that they are part of the coalition grouping. And I think this is part of what we are seeing is a more assertiveness coming from them, and we can expect it from the other political parties also, without splitting away from the coalition, but at least that they can say we are not simply subsumed in this coalition, but we have our own ideas, we have our own policies, and we want to present it to the electorate. So it's an awkward period for coalitions now, so close within 1 year of a major election, and that always puts strain on coalition governments.
The ANC seem confident of getting back onto the podium, as it were, but from what you've described, it doesn't look likely. Action SA seems to have been quite steadfast in keeping the ANC out of any office if it can help it. Do you think that this coalition is intact and it really is just about finding the right candidate that satisfies all parties?
I think in the case of Tshwane, that is more or less the situation. When it comes to Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, it's very different. As I've said earlier on, the gap between the ANC and the DA is simply too big for the DA to actually be a real contender for forming a coalition government in those two metros. To be realistic, it's because of the difference. It is actually almost impossible for the DA to have a coalition in both Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni. But it does not apply to Tshwane. Tshwane is there, the situation is evenly balanced, but to some extent in favor of the DA. And as I said earlier on, those uncertain elements that in the past created instability in the coalitions, and that's to a large extent the position of the Patriotic Alliance and of the EFF, those are not factors in the case of Tshwane.
All right, Professor, we'll leave it there for tonight. Thanks very much indeed. Your insights always greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's political analyst Professor Dirk Kotze, who's with UNISA, speaking to us about the situation in Pretoria. The mayor has resigned. He had initially said with immediate effect, but he's changed his mind and said at the end of the month, which probably means there's a lot of negotiations that are going to be taking place in the next couple of weeks.